The difference between me and everyone else is I make a decision, and when I make a decision, like, I'll die before I don't do that decision. Like, it's death or done, but period.
Am I gonna go?
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Money, Loyalty, Legacy. My name is Matt.
Thinking about your boy, aka the champ.
And today's awesome guest is the former ISCF welterweight champion. He has won Fight of the Night 4 times with the UFC. He's had Performance of the Night 4 times with the UFC. He was Sherdog's All Violence First Team in 2012 and 2013. He had Best Knockout of the Year via Bloody Elbow in 2017. He lives by the code of Bushido, and he is by far one of the most entertaining and spectacular fighters to ever step foot in the octagon. He is one of the realest. He is the immortal Matt Brown.
You missed some records, bro.
Some records? What else we missing, brother?
Number 2 in the history of UFC knockouts. Number 1 in welterweight division knockouts.
It wasn't listed on the website. I went on
the website
on the Sherdog and UFC on
them.
I swear to because I was going through all this before you came. I'm like, it's not listed on there.
He's about to get another knockout right here, brother.
I thought you had the most knockouts in welterweight history, but it wasn't listed on there.
Yeah.
That's a fact though, right? Because I was gonna say that, but I went to the UFC stats page and it wasn't listed on there.
Yeah, the most in welterweight and the second most in UFC.
No.
Sure, yeah.
Why did they not? I don't know why they don't have that on the website. Because I was literally going through every stat.
Haters, bro.
Really?
Nah.
I was gonna say, because like honestly, like throughout your career, you always had that like gung ho. I like to classify as like a samurai. You know what I mean? You go into battle every time, and you like leave it all on the line. It's either kill or be killed. That's always been your mentality. I've seen you in interviews and stuff like that, and I know that's always been your mentality. But it's like it's so awesome to watch that, because you can tell from the way you fight, you're always all in, you know what I mean, and people love that, you know what I'm saying, like speaking of which, what was your mentality when you first joined the UFC? You know what I'm saying? Like we'll get into when you started out, but when you first got the biggest organization in the world, were you pumped, or like were you just chill? You're just like, all right, another day at work, or what? Because I can't see you going out and popping bottles and getting all ecstatic. You know what I'm saying?
I didn't do all that, no, but yeah, I mean, I was pumped. It felt very special. I think it was the time that I got in the UFC, like it was a more special experience than it is now. I think there's so many fighters, so many ways to get into the UFC now. But my process was kind of gradual though, because, I got on the Ultimate Fighter. I had to win a fight to get on the Ultimate Fighter, but then you're still not really in the UFC yet. And then you have to get through the Ultimate Fighter. I got through it, didn't win. So still wasn't officially in the UFC. And then you got to go to the finale. And now that you're on the finale, it's like, you got to win this fight. And then now you're in the UFC, you get the contract, which I got. But then it's like, okay, well, now I got to win. Because you lose your first one, they might cut you right there. So there wasn't like a moment where I was like, I made it. You know what I mean? It was like, no, there's just another obstacle in front of me every time. So there just wasn't a moment like that.
Yeah, we had a former guest on, Kevin Ivacek. He made it, like he went through the whole thing with the UFC process.
Yeah.
Then to fight on the show, he lost. He's actually a highlight on one of the shows getting knocked out. It sucks, right? Great guy. I love the Kev.
The game's over.
But even for that, like one hurdle, another hurdle. So it's like it never stops, man. It's like you just keep running, bro. It's not.
Yeah, even when you're in the UFC, I mean, most guys, like I lost 3 straight once, and most guys get cut after 3 straight. That was kind of the standard back then. I don't know how much it's the standard now, but back then that was the norm, right? 3 is just, that's game over, and they kept me on. So, and then I went on to win a bunch more. So it's just always it's just always a process,
Absolutely.
Now, I got to say, you have the best, most gnarly story on how you started MMA in general, right? So initially you started off, you're drinking with your buddies and you'd watch Ken Shamrock videos, correct?
Well, that was
Like,
the first training.
yeah, but I'm saying like you as far as like getting like the interest into possibly getting into it,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Like
yeah.
you saw the Ken Shamrock videos and you're like, this is something that like I could be that guy or whatever, right?
Yeah,
You know what I mean? Is that correct?
yeah. I mean, I think a lot of people have that mentality. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, I was that dumb kid. I don't like that kid coming into my gym, but I want to thinking that they could do it. But I was that guy. I walked in day one like I want to be a UFC fighter.
Yeah.
Yeah, if that guy walks in my gym now, I'm like, bro, hold your horses.
Right.
I think there was a different time though, right? I mean, nowadays, I mean, not say it was not a different time. It's a good mindset. You know what I'm saying? You're watching the Ken Shamrock videos and like, cause there was nothing else really available at the time.
Sure.
Matt and I, big MMA guys, we
I mean, for
trained.
one, it was a different time, but also, 99.999% of people that say that aren't going to put in the work to do it. And that's why you're actually kind of laughing them off. I mean, it's not the fact that it's not doable.
Correct.
That's
No.
why you're laughing them off.
100%.
It's still doable. It's more doable now than it was then.
Yeah.
Right.
I think what Matt was getting at, this Matt, was, I heard it before, but the people that are watching and listening right now, your first experience of walking into a cage, because it's a wild story, if you don't mind telling it.
Yeah. So we were doing a lot of cocaine that night. So I like to say cocaine got me into fighting and fighting got me out of cocaine.
It works, brother. Hey, it's the only way to do it. Yeah.
Ironically. But yeah, I mean, that was exactly it. I went to a fight actually to watch my friend fight. He's a local guy who's supposed to fight Wes Sims, actually. His name was Fat Joe. Wes didn't show up, so didn't get to see him fight. But yeah, I literally walked in and it was what you'd see on TV, guys smoking cigars and betting on the fights and just hanging out like in a movie. And the announcer said, does anybody want to fight the champion? And I just got out of the bathroom and was like, let's go, and like no one else did, and I don't even think they were being serious. Like when I look back on it, I was like, he's probably just saying it, just to, fire up the crowd or whatever and pump the guy up. Right. And I was like, yeah, I'll fight him, like a dumbass. And then went across the street to get a mouthpiece and cup. There was also a restaurant across the street, so I had to use their microwave to boil the mouthpiece. Come back, fought. An hour later, had to pay $30 and ended up winning.
What was the $30 for?
It's like a commission fee.
Just
not even a commission. It wasn't no commission. Just like a fee.
Just they took it just to take it from you, basically sign some paperwork.
Yeah. To be honest, I don't even know.
I was like,
that was pretty standard back
yeah,
then.
yeah.
Everybody had to pay to fight.
Right. No, for sure.
And just to clarify, you didn't have any formal training at that point.
No.
That this is just like I could do this, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. You're just and at that point in your life, were you getting into squabbles in the street and stuff like that? Yeah. So you would have been plenty of bar fights and just getting.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. Like I asked my kids the other day. I have boys that are in 8th grade, and I was like, you guys ever seen any fights? Like you guys never told me about any fights in school. I'm like, nah, we ain't never seen no fight. Like I was crazy, But like the way I grew up, I mean, there was a fight every week, and I only thought about it recently when talking with them. Like I think it might have prepared me a little bit for this life because you guys remember, I'm sure, when it'd be like, we're meeting behind the grocery store at 5 o'clock. It's like now you got all day to think about it.
Oh, yeah.
All your buddies are going.
Right.
It's like you're walking into the cage essentially. Except, there was times where it ended up being 2 guys there, or or you'd be winning and someone else jump in. I mean, there's all kinds of situations that would arise. Guys grab rocks and there's all kinds of situations.
And you gotta go because if not, you gotta go to next day, bro, and you're gonna get dogged.
Yeah, that's
so like forget math class, social studies, dude. I'm sitting here worried about this right now. Like,
yeah,
it's happened before. Where I'm like, we're going back and forth, and I'm like, he's like, let's go, I'm like, let's go, and then I'm like, damn, man, we're really gonna do this. Like,
that's what
I got it.
I think there was a little bit of preparation mentally for that,
Yeah.
Or I just wasn't afraid to fight because it was just something I grew up with.
Right. And that having that mentality, a lot of guys don't have that. A lot of guys are afraid of confrontation. A lot of guys are afraid of violence. You know what I'm saying? So you have to be a certain type of individual to have the balls to actually throw down with somebody because you never know what's going to happen. You know what I mean? I feel like that's a certain type of guy that has that fortitude, that's willing to do whatever, take it to wherever you want to go. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and I think that carries over into a lot of things in life. I think one of the biggest problems that people have as human beings is having hard conversations. I just think that's, because it's a fear of confrontation, right?
100%.
In terms of relationships, I've kind of learned this more recently, like running a business. When you're dealing with martial artists and like a bunch of savages, a lot of testosterone, like all the time. Guys don't like having those hard conversations, right? So you got to find ways to get into that hard conversation, or relationships. I think that's something that's paid dividends for me in relationships. Like, if there's a problem, like, boom, let's just jump right into it. Don't let fester, or boil, right, and simmer in the back.
Right.
Sure.
And you're a very no nonsense guy. We've watched you for years fighting, and it's like, we're coming out, we're fighting, we're doing this, bro. We'll talk later, we'll have whatever, but it's game time, brother.
Yeah.
Now, when you had that first fight, obviously you're high, and you're, maybe not thinking correctly, whatever. For me, though, when that cage closes and you hear that pin drop, there's like a moment where everything kind of stops, and I'm like, I'm doing this.
Yeah.
Did that cross your mind? Like, when you're like, I was just here drinking with my buddies, bro. Now I'm fighting this dude, bro.
I don't remember it that well, to be honest. I mean, that was like 2001.
Yeah. Did you even have a corner?
No.
Just you.
Maybe. I might have had a corner.
Okay.
Because I was there with somebody, so
Right.
they might have cornered me or something. I don't remember that well, to be honest.
Okay.
Could you, before you actually got into the cage for the first time, that event that you're talking about, could you tell us just one badass street fight that you got into when you were younger that stands out in your mind? It's like something you haven't talked about before where it was like, man, that shit was gnarly. Like,
Man.
do you have any stories? Like, I'm sure you got.
God, I got so many.
Like, could you tell us some of those? Because people would love to hear that.
I guess one where I kind of clowned a guy was pretty cool. Like, because I pulled the Roy Jones where I put my hands behind my back and made him miss a couple times, then popped him. But I did that because he was my friend and I didn't want to fight him. But he was trying to f my girl. And I was like, bro, just leave, and he wanted to fight. And I was like, all right, like, I'm not going to hit you though. Yeah. Cause it was like, I thought he was a good friend. I mean, at the time. Right. Yeah. And then, I dropped him with one punch,
Really? How old were you at the time?
I would have been 19 or 20 at the
Okay.
time. Yeah.
So did
And then I got hit by a garden hoe once.
What?
Where at?
He's outside of a bar. Like, the dude literally like walked out to his car. Like, you were fighting in the bar, right? They kick us out. He's out to his car, grabs no, not a garden hoe, but the rake, like the gravel
The
rake.
hard ass one, dude. Like
Yeah.
the metal one.
Yeah. Cracked me with it.
In the head?
No, I hit like my back or something.
Damn.
Yeah.
Did he come from behind? Like, how did he
Obviously, yeah.
sneak up on you or something?
He walked right up too. I was like, but I'm like, you're not gonna hit that, right? And,
Yeah.
and then, even if you do, like, it's long and slow. I was like, hey, whatever. I did not avoid it though.
Damn.
But I beat the shit out of him with it after.
I was gonna say,
I took it from him, and I didn't use the garden rake side, the sharp side. I used the other point and just popped him in his ribs and stuff.
Damn.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. How many fights would you say you've been in your life?
Yeah, I got my first fight in kindergarten
Okay, so you were what, like?
over what? A crayon?
over playing house. Like, I still remember it.
Really?
I still remember, like, the guy's name was Duke, and we were arguing about playing house, and he kicked me in my head. Yeah. I was like, what the yeah. So then did a couple, I guess, when I was young like that. But, they weren't real fights, but the one got kicked in the head. But then the next real fight that I remember was third grade. And this kid, he was like a karate champion. And I didn't even, I didn't respect karate. I was like, dork, right? And dude, he kicked, my body, and I grabbed his leg. I still remember, this is at a festival, right? Like the little local town festival. And there's a bunch of guys standing around. I grab his leg and I start laughing at him. Like, what are you gonna do? He jumps with his other leg and hits me in my head and knocks me out.
It knocked you out?
Knocked me out. I still remember waking up with everybody like, "Are you okay, bro?"
You're like, what happened?
Yeah. So my first two major fights I lost.
Right.
Damn.
Yeah.
Well, you learned that from the Diego Sanchez. Obviously, you learned, okay, he's gonna come with that kick. I'm gonna go with that whole way.
Exactly. Yeah. Next,
So that was a learning process to get to that level, brother.
Exactly,
So
yeah.
that's cool.
So you said you knocked a guy out at 19. Do you feel like did you always have that knockout power? Because a lot of people don't have the knockout power to hit somebody with one punch and take them out. Did you always feel like you had that?
I wouldn't say it's power. I think it's like, I think I just have good eyes for accuracy. Like, I can stay calm and find the chin or, a good punch.
Yeah. For sure. Do you feel like when you were growing up, were people like afraid of you? Were people like, man, don't f with Matt. Like this dude will
No,
he doesn't give a
no,
fuck.
I got bullied and
Really?
I wouldn't say afraid, like, but like I got with, and got bullied, but I would say like they knew I would come back.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So like that was the fear. It wasn't like necessarily I was gonna them up,
Yeah.
but like the worst bully in high school. Like I mean, he f***ed me hard all the time. He was a stud. He's a senior. I was like freshman or sophomore. I don't remember. But he's like the wide receiver. The king of the school, and she's with me all the time. And finally, one day, I just shoved him into the bleachers. Right in the middle of you know there's 100 people in the gym. You know what I mean? I'm just like, fucking bro. Um, and so when you say fear, like yeah, they knew that they were gonna fight if they with me.
Yeah.
But they would still with me.
Yeah.
Now I think that tell me if I'm wrong. I could tell watching you fight. Once again watching you fight, you have that. It's you've talked about before, just that kill or be killed instinct. Do you think that kind of from being kind of coming up that way as opposed to maybe someone else that like your mentality changed over time with that, with like coming up fighting from kindergarten?
I think
kinda
that just
jumped
comes from like, cause where I came from, like being a drug addict and a loser, and I was like, I don't have to lose, man. No hope equals no fear, right? Like, it's a song. Well, that was just my mentality. I was like, dude, I don't have to lose, and I was never afraid to go back to that life.
Yeah.
I was like, I mean, not drugs and jail and but like if I would even today, like if I lost everything I got, like I don't give a shit. Like
Yeah.
I'm not materialistic. I'm like I don't care. Like I'm gonna get it back. So that just carried over in the cage. I think a lot of like fighting is a expression of your personality deep inside,
Right.
which is a beautiful thing, right? And I just never had that fear. I was like, if I get knocked out, like okay, I'm gonna wake up tomorrow and then I'm gonna come back, and that's what immortal means. Like it doesn't mean like I'm gonna never die or whatever, but what it means is like you can't stop me, like you can't bury me deep enough for me to not dig myself out.
Right.
So I'm not afraid of that. I'm not afraid to lose it. I'm not afraid to get buried in a hole. Like I don't give a.
Yeah.
I'm still gonna keep coming.
So I want to get into the whole mindset process, but when you were into the partying lifestyle, there was a story of you OD'ing, right?
Mhm.
And on heroin. I think of like the Nikki Sixx story where he dies and comes back and he does some uppers. That's just what it reminded me of. It's not the same, obviously, you know what I'm saying? But like,
Yeah, what a
what?
rock star.
Yeah, right. Fair. But when you passed over though, do you remember anything from that? Can you give any
I remember
insight?
waking up in pain.
Yeah.
That's about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember like going to the hospital. My friend was a nurse. I was very fortunate. She was there with me. I remember her taking me to or she was checking my blood pressure, and she's like, "You're up. Like we gotta do something." And I kind of remember going, and then I remember waking up in a lot of pain.
Yeah. And then what was your mindset? Like you had to felt like you're in a lot of pain. Why did you go and do blow after that? Like right from that, right?
Like I was bro, because
Yeah.
like my mindset was like, okay, I'm not doing heroin.
Yeah.
Let's go do some coke.
Yeah.
It's not
That's sort of
yeah, I'm not laughing because it's funny or cool. If I was
It's
to say like,
not-
oh,
yeah,
it's
it's
just
not,
man. You know what I'm saying? So
not many people would do that though. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Like,
bro,
like
an
what,
idiot.
what got you into that? That it was just hanging around the wrong people, like and that shit going on. Like why get into that life? Because you obviously, I'm sure you heard the heroin and that shit, like really bad. Obviously, you know what I'm saying? Like,
I mean, at that time, I hadn't really heard that.
oh no, okay,
I mean, I think it's pretty obvious.
Right.
Well, you
yeah.
don't have to hear it.
right.
It's pretty self-explanatory.
But
But you don't realize it's that bad.
Yeah.
I mean, but no, it was just, I think, coming from a very small town, like my population was 200 in the town that I grew up in. And there was a lot of like, childhood, you could dig into, right? I'll save that for a therapist one day. But just feeling like trapped there. Right? I always knew that I was destined for something bigger, but I had no idea how to get there. And there wasn't opportunities. I was actually a smart kid. I was really smart. Still think I'm pretty smart.
I know you
But-
get
for sure.
Yeah, you own a business, brother.
Yeah. The like I was honor roll student without trying. Like I hated school, never, skipped half the time and never did my homework and still got the honor roll because it was just
You got it.
easy.
Yeah.
It was just so easy. And my dad was a machinist, so I was in a machine shop by the time I was like 12 years old, doing high level stuff. It was before like CNC machines where you got to do it by hand. Like for instance, my first car was a 1957 Ford pickup. The blew the rings. So we got it for like $100 or whatever. Someone just had to get rid of it, and I took the summer and took it down to the rings, rebuilt the whole thing at 16 years old. And looking back, I'm like, damn, like that's pretty impressive. You know what I mean? Like I took it to the bottom. I mean, it was a straight six. You can use you got a 10 millimeter and a screwdriver. You probably can get it.
Still,
But
don't
it's
matter.
still like,
Yeah.
it ran, right?
Right.
And I got DUI like a month later, and my dad sold it. He's like, thanks, buddy.
Right when you got right when you turned 16.
Yeah. I must have been 17 because I got my first one at 17.
Can
Yeah. But anyway, yeah, I was a smart kid. Like, and I knew that, I was bigger and better than where I was at, but there was no opportunity. So I was like, all right, well, it. Then I'm just going to do the stupidest shit that I can,
right. The first when you went to jail before, correct?
Many times.
Many times. Okay.
Yeah.
Could you talk about what was your longest stint? Or like
I got sentenced to 6 months, but I only did 3 of them.
okay. Can you take people through going to jail? It was in Ohio, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Could you take people through that process of that? Like what's going through your head? How old were you at the time?
The first time,
Yeah.
I think 18.
Okay.
Yeah, as soon as I turned 18. Yeah.
Okay. And then
Never
that
went to juvie, but
the 3-month stint, was that county?
yeah.
Okay. Can you walk people through what it was like for you the first time? Like what's going through your head? Your initial getting into people messing with you. Do you get pressed right away? You got to fight?
No,
Saying like,
county's not that bad. Like everybody just wants to get out of there. There was a few guys that, were waiting trial for serious stuff and they knew they were going to prison and, they might mess with you a little bit. But honestly, it's not even that bad. Like,
really?
yeah,
Okay.
like, so I went to a new jail, like they were trying to fill it up, which, I mean, I was getting sentenced anyway, but they were trying to fill it up. There was only about 75% capacity when I was in there. But being that it was so new, they actually let us do a lot of, I think they ended up revoking a lot of those things later. But, like we played basketball every day. I worked in the kitchen, so I would just eat and we could eat all the food we wanted out of the kitchen for those, 8 hours that you're in the kitchen. And then you play basketball. And so I would just work out all day, eat food. Like I got jacked while I was in there, and play basketball. So I got the cardio. I mean, right.
Yeah.
Like it really wasn't that bad. The only time I kind of got messed with was because like when I first went in, I did have that mentality of like, I thought it was going to be like some hardcore like prison or something. So I wanted to prove a point, like, I'm not going to be the sheep, So this one guy, I really f***ed up too by doing that, which you'll hear. So there's one dude, he just looked like the type of guy I wanted to f*** with. So I just let him know. So I was handing out trays and I didn't give him a tray. I was like, you're not getting one, bro. And he's like, okay. And just walked on. And I was like, well, that was pretty easy, like I expected, a little bit of confrontation. I was just trying to make a point, right? And I wanted the confrontation. Well, about, I don't know, 5 minutes later, whatever, this guy comes over and he's like, hey, the dude you with, that's a prison queen. Like he wants to be in prison. You guys know what a prison queen is?
Please explain.
So they live in prison with dudes.
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying. Yeah.
Like
so
that's
what they want.
that's their life.
Exactly.
Yeah, they don't want out of prison.
Yeah.
Like their boyfriends are in jail.
Right.
So like,
So
they
you
do
just-
whatever. They don't care. They're like, I live in prison anyway.
So you're,
Yeah.
I'm staying, monkey.
Yeah. They don't want to go to solitary, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, that is their life. So they're like, bro, like he's gonna stab you in your sleep.
Now, are these open bunks?
So these were
dorms?
60 people in each pod.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
But is it like the bunks, or are you guys actually in cells?
Had 2 bunks. Yeah, there was bunks, but there was 60 people
In the open
so it was
room.
30 bunks. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Okay. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So it's not like you're closing doors. It's all you guys in that room.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
yeah.
Cool. All right.
Yeah. But yeah, so I didn't sleep for a couple days, and then finally I was like, dude, can I just get into a different pod before I get murdered?
Was he eyeballing you, or is he just kind of like? I'm sure he's like just
never-
being sneaky about it,
He
right?
never looked at me again. Yeah,
Oh shit.
yeah. So
Was he? Now let me just ask you this, and we'll just brief on that. Did he have like a look on his face or something, or was it like you kind of looked like that's the dude I got to prove a point?
no,
to
I
everybody?
would look at him, and I mean, he never looked at me once. But yeah, I mean, you could tell. Like once they told me, I was like, oh yeah, that's
I'm like,
he's got the eyes.
yeah, dude, I know. Yeah, if you've seen the eyes, you used to know what the eyes look like, bro. It's just dead inside, right?
Yeah, so it was pretty intense for a couple days, but that was really the only intense story in jail. Like other than that, I mean, it was cool. And then, like I said, I only did 3 months, so they actually f***ed up. They called me one day and they said, Matt, pack your bags. 3 months in, I had a 6-month stint, and I was like, okay, So I get out, and it was a probation violation, was why I was in there. So the next day, I called my PO and I was like, hey, like, am I still on probation? Because I didn't serve all my time. And so this was like 2000, 2001, right when the internet first came out, and they had just updated the system, and they f***ed up and let me out. So she's like, well, according to the computer, you're still in jail. So
you're
she's
like,
like,
lay
"You need
low.
to-" Yeah. She goes, you need to go talk to the judge. So I went and talked to the judge, and she as well, since you came to us, then, we're not going to make you go through the whole process again.
Oh, that's pretty cool. I noticed. I mean, he came clean about it, right? One face.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
The reason why I'm trying to paint the picture for the audience. So you went through a lot when you're growing up, dealing with drugs, went to jail. The thing with you that resonated with me is like somebody like myself. Like I grew up with a lot of anger, up situation growing up and stuff like that. Go through a lot.
Yep.
At what age were you able to kind of conquer your mind and set your destiny where you wanted to be and get over all the, and how did you finally handle your demons? Like,
Yeah, I don't know if I still have, right?
yeah.
But the simple answer is, actually, I found a VHS the other day, and I think it's a VHS of the first fight where I got beat, because I went and signed up like that a couple more times, right? Uh, but then I signed up for, it's called San Shao. I don't know if you ever heard. It's like where Kung Lee came from.
Yeah.
It's out in Marysville, about 45 minutes from here. And I got my ass kicked, like, beat up, right? But the dude, I talked to him after. He was like, I want to say like 13-1 or some shit. And, I was like a street fighter. I had never been into a gym, at this point. But afterward, I talked to him, and he's like, man, you're like one of the toughest dudes I've ever met. He's like, he couldn't knock me out, couldn't finish me. It was funny, actually, that fight, because I didn't know what Sand Shot was. So he comes in, I gotta find this video, figure out how to take it from VHS to DVD or on a computer, hard drive or something. So like he shot in, and like I looked at the ref like, the f is this? I thought it was kickboxing, right? And then so I started like dropping my hands, like, okay, I guess we're wrestling with boxing gloves and shin guards, right? And then he kicks my head. I was like, what the f are we doing? Yeah, like, what is this? So anyway, yeah, he beat the hell out of me, man. But it was, a little bit competitive. So that told me, I happened to meet some cool people backstage, and they're like, yeah, bro, come to my gym or whatever. So the next week I started looking for a gym. And when I went to a gym, that was when I actually got my ass kicked in a different way, because when I go in a fight, you get your ass kicked, and there's always that somewhere in the back of your head is like, man, I just had a bad day, or, if I would have done this, blah, blah, blah. But when I went to a gym, I'd get my ass kicked and then get another chance, and then get my ass kicked again. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna adjust this, get my ass kicked again. Oh, I'm gonna do this, get my ass kicked again. And I realize I'm with like real professionals now. And those kicking, for whatever reason, that was what woke me up to my purpose. I said that day, I walked out of there and I said, I'm gonna do this or I'm gonna die trying. Like, I'm not doing anything else with my life ever.
And how old were you at this point?
24.
Now, I think we ask these questions because you are a great inspiration to a lot of people.
Like,
Maybe that you don't even know, but you can be touching a lot of people with your story.
Yeah.
I think it's very inspirational. You know what I'm saying? And it's awesome to hear that, because I mean, we all have our demons. People don't show them right away. We all got them, dude.
Yeah.
I don't care what no one says. We got them. You know what I'm saying? Some could be big, some could be small. But it's nice for you to say it. That's why we asked that, so people can, like, they might be going through the same shit, you know what I'm saying? And not even know.
Absolutely.
Was there ever anything that you wanted to do in life, or you were just like, because obviously you said you were good at school. Was there something you kind of like coming up like, I want to be that?
And no,
It was just kind of like, then you found this and
I
it was like,
didn't know what I wanted to be. I said, coming up in such a small town, like you don't recognize how big the world is and how many opportunities there are. You know, the whole you can be anything you want wasn't really a thing in the 90s. You know what I mean? At least in the small town that I was living in, it was more like, this is what you're doing. And I was like, dude, this ain't what I want to do.
was it just a small, like kind of like, well, not that you said small, but was there just jobs that kind of graduate high school and you just go into work?
It'd be a population of 200. Like it was farmers.
Yeah. Okay.
You know, like my uncle owned a welding shop, my dad owned a machine shop. And it's like, that's the life.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's what's in front of your eyes. You know, you don't get exposed to other things. You see it in the movies and it seems surreal. Like it doesn't seem like something that you can go achieve yourself, right? Because it's just a movie. Even like skyscrapers. I never seen a skyscraper until I was like 22, 23 years old. You know, I remember walking downtown Columbus for the first time, like, what the like, this is nothing like the movies, right? But that, you know, so, you know, it's a very small-minded mentality. And, you know, I just didn't have the upbringing of a larger mind, you know, higher frequency and better vibration type mind. So I had to develop that myself. And fighting was my path to doing that. You know, when like I said, when I found fighting, I was like, this is what I'm doing. Like, I don't care if I die doing it. This is what I'm doing. And I think that was where a lot of that mentality come from, the kill or die, because that's exactly what it was. It's like, if I die, then cool. I made up my mind. Always say, like, I married the sport that day, and I'm a faithful spouse, bro. Like this is what I'm doing, and I'm gonna do it till the day that I die.
That's the dopest shit I heard on the podcast.
What?
Seriously, dude, that was sweet, dude.
We're gonna.
That's awesome, bro.
The thing that you'd said was, you know, when you went to your first real gym, you're getting your ass beat, and that's when you decided you want to be a fighter, right?
Yeah.
Was it the challenge of like, all right, I want to get better at this, right? Like I don't want these guys to keep messing me up, right? Was it the challenge, or was it just the combat in itself? Like, what aspect of it was like, this is what
I think a little bit
love?
of both. I think a lot of it was just realizing, maybe naively a little bit, that like, you know, these are just humans, you know, like I can do this. And then, you know, okay, and I'm wanted that challenge. You know, I've always been a type of guy searching for challenges, you know, trying to build myself up bigger and better. And that seemed to me like one of the biggest challenges that you could possibly go for, which it is.
1,000.
So, you know, that, I don't know, it got my dick hard, you know. It got, you know, woke me up in the morning, gave me a purpose in life, you know. And some people, you know, obviously it's not for everyone, you know. Some people want to, you know, do accounting, and that gets them up in the morning, right? They the weird people.
Get it, brother.
But, you know, finding that purpose is very important, I think, you know. And one of the things, like a little quote that I heard back then that I've kept with me the whole time, was stop trying to find yourself and start to define yourself. And that stuck with me, because I was like, you know, I think a lot of the drugs and the party was like trying to find myself. And when I found fighting, I was like, no, now I'm going to define myself. This is who the fuck I am. And that was how I got away from the drugs and alcohol. Like, I'm not an addict. I don't have the disease, right? I think you guys spoke with Coleman, right?
No,
Yeah.
Where you're going to, right? Like, he has the disease. Like, you see these people that have it, and you're like, okay, I don't have that. So I was able to simply make a decision and quit, right? Cold turkey, boom, one day, no more. But the way that I did that was I just changed my identity. I said, okay, what does a warrior do when he wakes up in the morning? He goes and runs, and then eats some fucking protein and some rice, and, you know, and then, okay, what does he do in the afternoon? This, you know what I mean? So I was like, well, that's my identity now. That's who I identify as. And so that's how I'm going to live. You know, and some identify, you know, as girls, or, you know, what. Yeah.
Don't talk over here, bro. I mean, you're just kicking ass over here. As they do, man. It's 2024, dog, but, you know. No, but I thought you were going back to counting. Cat they identify.
Well, the point is, look, like that's how you achieve big things, right? So like, I've changed what I do now. Like, now I don't identify as a fighter in a cage anymore, right? Now I'm a fighter in business. right? So I have to wake up and I have to live that way. I have to speak that way, so that's how I think about it. And like, if I want to stop something one day, I just imagine like, okay, what is the person that doesn't do that thing? What does he do? It's pretty simple, I think.
Yeah, you
It's
kind
like
of
it's just being a chameleon, basically. Just blend in with who that is. Like, if you want a higher value woman, like, okay, well, what's the type of man that they're gonna chase or pursue or be with? Well, you have to be that person. You have to identify as that person and do what they would do. Obviously, and I think that's where the whole you're the average of your five friends, because you generally blend in with the environment that you're around.
Right.
absolutely.
I don't think that's necessarily true though. Like, only because, like, for me, like, that's not true. Like, I'm around a lot of people in a lot of different capacities, in a lot of different levels and areas, but I keep to myself and do my thing. What No matter, regardless of how they're doing it, because I know what I identify as. I have a purpose. I have a mantra. I know what I'm doing. I know where I want to go. I know where I'm going to go, and it's pretty simple I think when you kind of frame it that way.
No, absolutely.
Absolutely. You know, a lot of people can't get that programmed mentality in their mind. You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? A lot of people
Yeah,
are like,
yeah.
oh, I'm going to go get in shape. And then they put it off for like a month, or, oh, I'm going to go do this. And then they never end up. So many people talk about what they're going to do, and they don't end up doing it. You know what I mean? Some people just aren't able to control their thoughts or their minds. They don't have that mental discipline. Is that mental discipline of you setting your sights on something and actually going after it? Was that something that you had to develop, or is it something you always had? It was within you.
No, I think you have to develop it, but I completely disagree with what you just said. You said some people aren't able to. I completely disagree. They absolutely are able to. They don't make the choice to. I always say, like, to the fighters, like, I'm not a uber talented guy. I'm not crazy athletic. I'm not a John Jones that can go on a coke binge and go beat Daniel Cormier. Like, that's
Yeah,
a
no, for
special
sure.
talent.
Yeah.
I don't have that. I was a hardworking. The difference between me and everyone else is I make a decision, and if when I make a decision, like, I'll die before I don't do that decision. Like, it's death or done. But period. There's no other, like, I don't negotiate about things in my mind, right? Well, like, we go run these stairs out here, the Hoover Dam. If you guys want to push yourselves and die, go out there. And sometimes, like, 10 is kind of the normal that we do. Sometimes I'll go out and be like, oh, we're doing 20 today. And, like, if I die on number 19, that's the only thing that's going to stop me from doing 20. Like, that's what you have to do, right? You can break my legs. I'm going to crawl on my hands. You can break my ribs, like, whatever. It doesn't matter. Like, I will do all 20 of them.
That's badass, bro.
And like I said,
No,
that's
yeah.
that's the only difference between me and a lot of the fighters, coming up, or guys that, tried to get where I got.
Now, do you try to implement that in people because you have your gym now? Do you coach?
Mhm.
Like, so do you try to implement that into your fighters, and you see that in them? Because
Mhm.
having that mindset
Absolutely.
it's leaps and bounds between another fighter and someone else. We talked to Lance Palmer, and, like, the wrestling mentality can build you up, and that's something that you
Mhm.
build up to. So, I mean, you passing it down to some fighters you believe in, I think that's very important. Even anybody in any anything in
I
life.
do try to put that on, but honestly, if they don't already have a strong inclination of that mentality, I'm not even interested in working with them. I work with very few fighters, and for that exact reason, like, there's just not that many that are willing to do whatever it takes, period.
No, that makes sense.
Did you look up to any martial artists? I know you're a fan of Bruce Lee now, but when you were younger, did you look up to Bruce Lee? Did you ever watch
Interesting. Interesting. I'm not a huge fan of Bruce Lee,
Not a huge
actually.
fan. Oh, I heard you quote him a couple
So,
times.
well, that's where I am a fan. I'm more of a fan of his philosophies than him as a martial artist,
Right.
right? He wasn't like some amazing martial artist, right? Um, but yeah, I mean, I looked up to tons of fighters. There wasn't really like one in particular or anything. I just looked up to a ton of them. I've always been a huge fan of like boxing history, so I've always looked back at the old time boxers, like the Sugar Ray Robinsons, the Jack Dempseys, and Rocky Marcianos, those types of guys. I just always enjoyed that shit a lot more. Um, but yeah, I mean, there's a million that I've looked up to. I've always been a lot more of a fan of like the individual sports than MMA in general. Like MMA just isn't, to me, as exciting to watch.
So you're more into boxing then?
I love boxing. wrestling, Muay Thai, Jiu-Jitsu, like the individual sports I find, I don't know, to me it's more fascinating.
Okay.
When you first got contacted to come to the UFC, could you talk about that process? Did Dana call you, or how did that go? Because it was different back then.
No,
right?
I contacted them.
Really?
So it was the Ultimate Fighter tryouts.
Yeah.
Like I was living in New York at the time, and I was actually considering not even fighting anymore because I'd been, I had 15, 20 fights, whatever, and, making $500 to fight or some, I'd fought a couple UFC guys already. Like they'd heard my name, like, I think they were looking at me or something. But I had a great life in New York City. I was a personal trainer on the Upper West Side. If you know the Upper West Side, it's like one of the, nicest areas, wealthiest areas. I was making a ton of money, hot girls around all the time. Like it was awesome, right? So I was really debating on whether I wanted to keep fighting. And it was hard to find training in New York City. It was way harder than I expected when I moved there. But I had some good training partners, but not consistently every day. So I was kind of on that grind at that point, and debating on whether I was going to keep fighting. And then the tryouts were in Newark. So I took the day off work, went over there, not really expecting anything, but hopeful. And it worked out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Were you pumped at this point? Were you like,
Well, again, it's such a process, like, because you do the first tryout, and then they do an interview like a few months later, and then they take you out for medicals, and then it's just such a process. But I do remember when they finally sent me the flight to come out to Vegas to go on the show, and I was ecstatic, man. But with that said, they tried to surprise us that we'd be fighting to get on the show, but they also told us we had to make weight to get on the show. And I was like, well, why do we have to make weight like day one? So they're like, you have to make weight day one. So everybody kind of knew, that we were going to be fighting to get on, but they hadn't done that before. So there was a little bit of open space there. And so again, as ecstatic as I was like, dude, the job isn't done yet. Like you're still not even on yet, So again, it's like a process. There was a little bit of a moment there for a second was it.
Did they give you enough what do you usually walk around at? And then,
back then I was walking around like 185.
Okay.
Yeah.
Was it hard for you to cut?
No, because it was a 185 season.
Yeah. So I'm saying so then you walked around like a Frankie Edgar at that point at 55,
Exactly.
walking around.
Exactly. Yeah. So I skipped a meal to make sure I made weight.
Yeah.
That was it.
So, can't speak for other people. Was it ample time, say if you was like for someone to cut the weight, or was it kind of the ticket like,
I don't
thrown
remember.
at you,
I don't remember. I remember some guys had some hard times.
I'm sure.
Yeah, but I don't remember. I think my opponent had a hard time because he was the biggest of all of them. I'm a 170er coming up, and they put me against the biggest guy there. And funny enough, so he was one of Rampage's friends, right? Rampage and Forrest was our coaches, and they randomly select the corners. Well, they selected Rampage for my corner, but he was one of Rampage's guys. So now I got Rampage and his team cornering him, Forrest team cornering him. And I was like, all right.
So, like they giving you any advice, or like they kind of just
I don't remember it that
kind of went in your own game plan?
Yeah, I don't remember it that well, but they definitely weren't giving me legit advice to be like, they knew who he was. You know what I mean? Like they weren't going to say like, this is his weakness, do this.
Yeah. So let's cut to the chase. I made an ebook. It's got over 700 methods and strategies to build your YouTube channel, to get views. It actually works. I made this because over the 3 years prior to this podcast, I bought all the courses, spent thousands of hours watching all these YouTube videos, and none of them actually give you any information. This ebook has 700 plus secret strategies and methods that only top YouTube influencers use. I promise it works. Money back guarantee. Trust me, go buy it now. Half off.